Well, good morning, everybody. I just want to give you another update on the total number of severe weather reports that came out of yesterday's derecho. And so this morning, here on the 30th, we're looking at the storm reports from the 29th, and we're now up over 540 reports of severe weather. So you can see where this particular system began. In fact, just to make clear on this, the storms actually started over here in parts of Colorado, then moved across Nebraska. But it was very rapidly developing into a squall line that became a bow echo that now, that we've seen the whole system evolve, we are considering a derecho. And a derecho has to deal with the total length and also the number of reports along the way. So this most certainly qualifies as a derecho. One thing I'm interested in seeing is as the National Weather Service goes out and does the damage surveys, this number might change, the number of tornado reports. I last night was just looking around on Twitter at some things, and I asked Kyle if I could show his pictures here because Kyle took these outside of Chatham, Illinois, which is actually very close to where I live. In fact, if I walked across the street from my parents' home, growing up, I was in Chatham School District. And just looking at some of his pictures here, these are quite amazing, but I imagine they will most certainly find out that this would be tornadic damage. And the reason for that is if you kind of look at the pattern of damage in the field, now certainly it's in a very narrow corridor, but you can actually see the swirling up of the corn right along this line and through here. And that's just one of many different damage indicators. I have a very close friend and absolutely brilliant former student that does a lot of research in this area, so I'll be interested to hear his assessment. And interestingly enough, he's also from Chatham. But if you take a look at this, this is going to be an indicator that will be used and will likely be included in those tornado reports once this is finished. So just brilliant work. I want to thank Kyle for doing this and putting this out there so I could show it. If we look back at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation through 5 o'clock this morning, we can see just how heavy the rains have been in the last 3 days throughout parts of the Western Plains, including some flooding around Denver, a lot of hail there as well. And then just where this particular system went. Now, that is not to ignore other precipitation events. We've had better storms here in parts of the upper Midwest and the Northern Plains, and this is an area that I really want to see this action, given that we're concerned going forward that we're going to go drier here. We do have a front that's coming through here next week, but we keep seeing the models kind of change the best position of that rainfall. You can also see the exiting system in New England that brought in some of the precipitation there. Just important to kind of keep up on all of this. Now, I want to be clear about something. I just want to make sure I was not misunderstood. This did not bust a drought in this area. When we think about busting a drought, it's about delivering an entirely new precipitation regime that's going to kind of cure the near-term topsoil drought issue, not the long-term hydrologic drought. And I want to just tell you something here, great tool for you to use. If you go to my website, ag-wx.com, agweather.com, ag-wx.com, you can come over here to the left-hand side and start looking up any city. I've got 30,000 cities in the database. This is not my mobile-friendly version of this. We're working on actually a new mobile app, and I have a prototype out there, but let's just look at this one right now. Now, I currently live outside of Champaign, Illinois, so I'm just going to come over here and start typing in Champaign. It narrows down the list. I need you to click on the city from the drop-down here, so it puts a number in there. That's just the index number for Champaign. When you click Submit, and by the way, I'm doing this on 4G LTE, so I have to tether off my phone while I'm away, but it still works pretty fast. You do the click here, and you get a lot of your forecast information. Now, if you notice in Champaign, we are expecting a whole lot more rain in the next 7 days. The models are somewhere between 2 and 3 inches of additional rainfall coming through. But that's not what I want you to look at. I want you to look at this right in through here. And by the way, we likely have a fog in Champaign this morning. 64 temperature, 64 dew point, relative humidity 100%. I'm not home, so I can't go out and verify this. But you can certainly see that those metrics line up to give you that humidity level. But come back to here again. I'm sorry. Right in through there. That's the line I want you to look at, because if you scroll down, the very first thing that'll be highlighted out of all of these radio buttons you can choose is the precipitation compared to normal in the last 5 years. Now, this is what that event did yesterday. I mean, it brought that line up. And if you'd like to see the drop bust, this just has to keep looking like a set of stairs. It doesn't have to get all the way back up to normal, but it just has to start on the correct slope on that trajectory. And while there is more precipitation coming here in the near term, the deficit built up since the last big rainfall event, which for Champaign was May the 8th, is substantial. We're almost 7 inches behind normal at 68%. Use the tool, go to your location. I want to remind you something. I'm combining two data sets here. And it's not going to be perfect because radar is an imperfect instrument to do this. And I'm actually going to put together a special in-depth video to show you why, even though radar is one of the best tools we have for measuring precipitation, it doesn't give you a perfect near-ground solution. We'll do that very soon. But again, just a great resource and free from Nutrien to you. Just something we've got here for you. Okay, on the hail side of this, we again are just watching for where these storms put down their hail. And you probably saw some of the video reports again from Colorado. But it is important to note over the last 3 days just how much hail has been in some of these storms. And we're certainly tracking well above the recent trends in hail for much of the United States. I also want to talk a bit about just the whole evolution of this system as seen on radar and tell you where we sit this morning. So you'll just see as this animation plays, here is this morning storm setting us up over the next couple of days for more activity right along that same corridor. So there goes the derecho as it kind of lost its momentum getting over here into parts of Kentucky. It gusted out, and then you can see here the new storms building today. So this is just the tail end of one event and the next event that we're going to be watching here. This was overnight last night, and here's some of the storms we're just watching early this morning. Now what's feeding all of this as this resets is finally just a ridge that tried to get farther and farther to the east. You can just imagine with me here that if this ridge sits over Texas, the problem is you don't make this pull on the Gulf moisture. So you can see the moisture coming around this side, and that's what's helping. Our Bermuda high is still very much displaced. You can make an argument that it's way up here, but there is a long train of moisture kind of getting pulled that eventually is getting into this area. So this is, while not a perfect scenario, it is a better scenario overall with this setup. If you just step from here up to the 500 millibar level, you can see that we're going to watch shortwave troughs like this one and this one just run over the top of this ridge, and that's what initiates these storms. That is what defines a ridge riding thunderstorm. So today from the Storm Prediction Center, they're again identifying from Colorado all the way to the Tennessee Valley, through the Ohio Valley, the risk of severe storms. Then you go into the day on Saturday. Again, we're going to watch this section of southern Illinois. And there was a lot of damage in this area yesterday. So as the storms kind of cascaded through here. So we now have an enhanced risk on day 2 for that area. And then finally, we're going to look at the day here on the 2nd, and we're going to watch this finally move on off to the east. Now, I want to be very clear about something. The model forecasts that I'm going to show you in a few moments are not going to do as good a job as the SPC is going to do at just identifying these areas. Because as you know, models struggle with convection. Our weather forecast models are, they are just an important part of our modern scientific, revolution, what we've been able to do, but they're still not perfect. And so we're going to rely on these SPC maps again today, tomorrow, on Saturday, and getting into Sunday here. Now, in addition to this, by the way, you see this front coming through. I want you to remind you about this in just a few moments. But in addition to this, we are still watching. This is early this morning as the sun was rising. We are still watching the smoke from wildfires in Canada. If I take you back to yesterday, you can see that smoke still here in Quebec. These fires have been absolutely just incredible to watch. The forecast for these as it stands from the high resolution models continues to show just a lot of haze and smoke throughout the lower 48, some higher concentration along the northern tier of the United States. But remember, some of the smoke you're seeing down here inside of the ridge, which is there, was actually from Mexico as well. So a lot of wildfire smoke coming from both Mexico and Canada, doing this to the air quality across parts of the United States. You can see that today, as of 6:10 this morning when I was recording, we do have several states here stretching from the Great Lakes Basin all the way to the east that do have air quality problems. And I want you to see we still have, in through this whole area, we still have the heat advisory and then the excessive heat warning in this particular area. There's the fog right there this morning. That's the dense fog advisory for early this morning. And then come back west. We do have here the excessive heat warnings that are running up through the Central Valley, but this heat that's in the west is not long-lived, and we've got better model evidence this morning of what that's going to look like as it continues to fade in the longer-term forecasts, but it's on now. Okay, so here's the first model run I want to show you. This is the high-res NAM, And I would ask that you just kind of watch the evolution of this, knowing that you can go look at these on my website anytime. And let's just kind of keep our eyes on a few of the moving pieces, like the moisture coming over the Appalachian Mountains today into the Mid-Atlantic and the Carolinas, the storms that continue to fire here, parts of South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. This model is not going to capture exactly where they're going to be. But by tonight, you can see the setup right in through here. Each of these storms has the potential for producing straight line wind damage. They have the potential for producing large hail and tornadoes. So if you kind of look at this at 8 o'clock tonight and you come back here, now we can see that setup that we're concerned about. So let's come back to it and play forward. This is going into the overnight hours tonight, and then we're going to play into tomorrow morning. Is there the chance that we could have another large damaging squall line even in the overnight hours running on top of the boundary layer? Absolutely. But it's going to be a nowcast situation watching how this unfolds. Scattered storms from Virginia all the way down to Georgia out ahead of this. Please don't kind of forget these other areas as I focus so much on this drought-stricken area in the middle part of the country. So this, I believe, is round 3 for the rain coming into this part of Nebraska, an area that desperately needs it. And you're going to see that going into Saturday, we're going to watch this curl up through Iowa, and I'm getting overly concerned maybe right now. It's a little early about the risk of this system setting up at some point on Saturday. The timing is going to be very difficult, but it does appear as though another squall line setup could be going across parts of central and southern Illinois into Indiana and Kentucky as well. But do note that as we go into the day on Saturday, a low will curl up over Iowa, and this would be absolutely, perfect for this area, because when lows curl up, they don't deliver the same setup for the severe winds. They deliver more steady rain over a longer time period. So if you notice, this enters noon on Saturday, or it's there by noon on Saturday, and spins over 6 to 12 hours in this area, and finally delivers some rain into places that really need it around the Quad Cities up to Dubuque, into southern Wisconsin. And these are areas just to the north here that desperately need more precipitation, a lot more precipitation. This goes finally into Sunday afternoon, and that's where the low currently sits at that point. So that's what I've got for you from the high-res models. If we switch over to the latest update from the WPC, this is their forecast looking at the next 7 days. So we're going to watch this area carefully. A lot of 2 to 3 inch numbers right in through here are possible. Are possible, not a guarantee. My concern has always been this part of the Canadian prairie getting across parts of the upper Midwest and northern plains. And then we need to see more moisture coming back into Texas, given that they've had evaporation rates between 2 and 3 inches as of late. So this is the WPC. Let's go have a look at the European models forecast. Whoops, one too many times there. Okay, take it back. This is what the European model is doing through the weekend. So that's through 1 p.m. Sunday. This is through Monday morning. So we're looking at, pause it here and take a look at these total precip numbers, or go to agweather.com and look at it yourself. I've got it all there. It updates every time a new model run comes out. And then what we're going to watch is, see this low curling up right here? This one's coming through parts of the northern Canadian prairie, also in the forest area here. But that is going to drag a front. See it right there? That's going to push up against the Rockies, possibly spread some storms right in through this corridor. And then going into Tuesday and Wednesday, that moves right through the Midwest as well by late next week. So that's another round of precip coming through at that time. So you look at a next week, and this is what I've got. A lot of isolated thunderstorm activity here, wet conditions into New England. Then you have the front slicing through after all the storms kind of rip through this area again over the next couple of days. So a map I want to show you again. This one looks at the model change from this morning compared to yesterday's run. And you notice that wetter in this area, drier in this region. So this is what we're going to continue to see as that front and its timing changes as it dips south. But everywhere you see these colors, that's where the newest model run, the 0Z run, was wetter than yesterday's 12Z. This is where they're drier. So I actually see the model went overall, for a lot of people in the country, it went wetter in the most recent forecast. I'd like to compare that to the GFS. So playing forward the 0Z GFS, this is through the weekend. Now into early next week, we're just going to watch that next frontal boundary sliding through here. And let's play this out there to where I stop the Euros. So European model, GFS. You can see the resolution differences. But again, we're looking for just the changes in precipitation. And a big change here I saw was in parts of the Northeast. But I always like to put all this into the context of the pattern and the probabilities. So as we play it forward, our ridge flattens here. This is the deeper trough that comes through, finally cutting through this area. We're going to see what that does to temperatures. Here's the system early next week, and that's the one that drives the front in here. And what's going to help that front is these two ridges that kind of flank North America. So this is out there on July the 5th. And then as we play through out a full week, maybe all the way up to the July the 8th, again, look at this setup. One ridge pinching here, another there, and this flow has just picked up its momentum as it moves across the country. And that's been the thing that has been missed. Notice at this altitude, we are actually seeing some sense of flow coming around slightly higher heights here. That's not a full return of the Bermuda high. That's a different look, but it's not nothing, which is important to assess here. As we play through this, let's go out there to day 10. What I do now like about this pattern is that if this really manifests itself as being the setup, this is something where we do start to see that 588 line, which is here, moving a little bit farther to the north, meaning that this corridor will likely stay quite stormy. This does bring in a lot of heat, though, and this has been an area that we've been watching carefully for how bad this heat has been. But notice, by July the 10th, see the trough here? That's going to cool California back off and set things up to be stormy again in the Intermountain West. So, probability maps. This is the chance in the next 10 days of grabbing an inch of rain. I mean, we've almost got a 90 to 100% chance in through this corridor and down here into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley. This is the probability of 2 inches. And just to look for where the models might be putting down the heaviest rain, there's our chances for 4 inches. Now, on the drier side of this is the probability of less than a ½ inch. So again, my concern are right in through this part of the Canadian Prairie, the northern plains stretching down to the Great Lakes. This is where we've seen a bit of a drying trend, and also into Texas and then the West. The West has the ridge opening now, and then we expect that to collapse, but it's normally a drier time for the West anyway. So let's look at the week 2 forecasts from the CPC, the European model, and the GFS. Again, the biggest difference is the European model has this area with a slight dry bias. And the European model has been the best performer. So we need to keep that in the context of the two maps that I kind of have surrounding this. All right. From here, let's talk about the temperatures, because at 6 o'clock or 6:30 this morning, we were already into the 80s in parts of the south. I mean, it's just never cooled off last night. And as we look at where these temperatures are going today, this is what the high temperatures are expected to be on Friday. So another day of very hot temperatures here. California, we see 113 to 108 into this area. But as we play into Saturday and then into Sunday, watch the transition in the west going forward. So remember, by Sunday, we're going to be watching for the last system to curl its way through Iowa and Illinois and Indiana here, hitting Michigan as well. And then after that, watch what's coming out of Montana on Monday into Tuesday. That's the front behind that big system. This is also the end of the heat that's been into California, because as you go from Tuesday into Wednesday, these temperatures are backing off, cold fronts coming through, and this is where it ends up by next Thursday. So this is the time period where the ridges flank, the one here and one here, but there's a trough in the west. There's cooler air in the central part of the United States. Texas, believe it or not, this is a break from the heat from what you've been seeing. From there, let me show you the 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. And let's park it out there day 5 through 10, and then move this out there day 10 through 15. So the concern is ridges here and here, the flow coming around and over, so there's a ridge event happening there as well, and then just sliding across the rest of the country like this. That's our setup as we move toward the middle of July. Now, later on today, I'd like it if you would go to the CPC website, because on this Friday, because it's the last Friday of the month, they're going to do a few things. They're going to update all of their hazards outlook. So like this is the risk of hazardous precipitation from the 7th through the 13th. There's the risk of the hazardous temperatures. But you're also going to get a brand new update of this, their week 3, week 4 outlook. They do this every Friday. So I really want you to go check that out. cpc.ncep.noaa.gov, noaa.gov. And then I also want you to go look here. They should be updating their 1-month outlooks for July. They'll give you your last outlook for July, but they won't update the 3-month. Okay, so please go check this out later on today. It's going to be a very valuable resource from our government just to kind of see where things are going. I hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be very weather aware. Have multiple ways by which to get severe weather information in through this area. And just keep an eye on this on Saturday and again on Sunday too, please. And I'll talk to you again next week. Thanks.